excited to welcome you to the podcast, and we're going to get straight in with the questions. I'm not going to give you a minute to settle in. What is the biggest challenge facing wedding venues in 2026?
Oh wow, that was not a question I was expecting you to ask. Okay, I have controversial opinions about things.
Great, we love
Okay,
controversy.
controversial opinions about things. I sometimes feel like the biggest thing that wedding venues are facing as challenges in 2026 is um, people telling them that it's really hard.
Ooh.
And this is my controversial opinion, and I'm sorry, but I've been in the wedding industry 20 years, like you. And every year, all I hear is nobody's got any money. It's really difficult to get couples. It's been a real, it's a real struggle. This year's really tough. And I've literally been listening to it since 2008.
Yeah.
And I feel like for sure there is truth in it. I'm not saying there isn't truth in it. There will always be venues, suppliers, etc., that are struggling to get couples. Of course, that absolutely is. There's absolutely truth in that. But what I feel like the narrative that sometimes gets pushed in the wedding industry is, you know, this is a particularly tricky time, or Gen Z are particularly tricky, or this is, everything's
Don't you
difficult.
think that's just human nature finding a reason why it's not my fault,
Yes,
right?
100%. And that's what drives me
It's
insane.
like,
And that's
oh my God, I can't do this thing because of this thing. Like it's just across human nature that we
Yeah,
find a reason that it's not us and we don't have to change what we're doing.
100%. And I'm a millennial. I book 3,000 weddings a year.
So for
It's
those
like
that don't know you, how many venues do you have now?
I have 12 venues across, two continents. Um,
So
um,
12 venues across the UK and the USA, right? So
yeah,
two really important big markets.
yeah.
And so you're not finding this to be a particularly tricky year. I'm not saying you're not working hard at it, but you're not saying that in your narrative.
No, actually, this year has kicked off much better for us than last year. We actually had a trickier start last year than we did this year, which is interesting. This year's kicked off pretty well for us. Um, I think it's important to add that my three venues in the US are Gen Z only venues because they
What does
get
that
married.
mean to people listening? What does that mean? My venues are Gen Z only.
Particularly in the UK, the average age for getting married is somewhere in the 30s, like 28 to
Mm,
34, I think is the average. Whereas in the US, particularly in Florida, our venue, most of them are getting married in their 20s.
wow. And are the
Um,
couples paying or is that mum and dad?
Mum and dad pay for a lot of it, I think you'll find.
Yeah.
Um, but it's just interesting because they generally tend to marry their, I mean, I think it's adorable. They marry their high school sweetheart and it's like this loving romantic. And when it's worked, you've got the generations, you've got great grandparents, grandparents, mothers, and then the kids getting married. Um, from that aspect, it's stunning. I would probably be in jail if I'd married my high school sweetheart.
Why? Because you'd have killed him by now? Like what?
I would have killed him by now, but also he was a bit of a naughty boy, so I feel like we'd have gone down an interesting path. I when I was in school, I liked the bad boys. Like it wouldn't have been good. It took me into my
Oh.
30s to realize that maybe the bad boys are not
Oh, and I know
good.
you've got the nicest, loveliest, most good-looking
I
husband as well.
do.
So you clearly
Yes.
chose well. Okay, back to our Gen Zers. So what are you seeing differently with those venues then in the US with those younger buyers than maybe people are seeing in the UK?
Well, that's what I think is really funny because I think there's a very strong narrative right now, which is like you have to talk to them differently, you have to deal with them differently, and they're very different and they're bringing something different and it's all different. And it's like, yeah, of course, there are differences, but the wedding industry moves. The wedding industry has always moved. We can look back at the wedding industry to when you had to get married in a registry office and the only venue you could pick was 30 minutes from the registry office or the church because no venues had licenses. So of course things evolve, of course things change, and of course you can say that the new audience coming through have a different opinion on how weddings should be done. But honestly, when it comes down to the core wedding, it's exactly the same as it has been for ages.
It's
Um,
almost scaremongering, right? Because if you're a
it's
person who
hugely
runs,
scaremongering.
if you own a venue or you're, a supplier or a vendor and you're in your 40s or 50s or 60s and everybody's telling you that these younger people you need to speak differently to, that's quite scary to those business people who have been very successful their whole lives, right?
And that's more of the point that I'm making is that it is, I keep seeing these TikToks and it's like Gen Z are changing the wedding industry. And I'm like, no, they're not. They're not. They're just as excited to get married as everyone else. They're having exactly the same issues everybody else has. And yes, they now, they're okay. You could say, well, originally you would find your wedding inspo from other people's wedding pictures. And then you would
Yeah.
find your wedding inspo from wedding magazines because wedding
Mm,
magazines came out and that was so fun. And then TV shows would have weddings and that
mm.
would be another inspo point. And then Pinterest came out and wow, that's so exciting. And then you've got Instagram and now you've got TikTok. Absolutely, there is definitely different things that are happening because of social media. For example, the biggest thing actually I would say venues should be terrified about is, we've had it in the US for about 2 or 3 years already now, but it's literally just coming to the UK, which is um, venue tours that are being recorded. So,
Hold on. Oh, stop the press. Really? Oh,
yeah.
and hold on, it makes so much sense to me because they're seeing venues, they can't remember all the details. So of course it makes sense just hold the phone up as we walk around so we can re-look at it when we go back home and show mum and dad.
Oh, yeah, and put it on TikTok. And
So if that coordinator makes a mistake, if there's a pile of rubbish in the corner or like,
Oh, okay. So that
oh,
happened to me. So that happened to me. So basically, what happened is there was this girl on TikTok, and obviously, because I follow all the venues, I get fed,
of course.
particularly. And like I said, I've been watching this for a long time in the US. They've been doing it already in the US for about 2 years. And it literally has started to come up in the UK on my feed in the last 3 months. Because I
Interesting.
think they're seeing US content. So then they're going, oh, we
We
can do
always
that too.
follow the US. We've seen this for
Always.
years, right? The colors, the styles, the chairs. Like a couple years later, boom, now we've got it. We're just a little bit behind.
Yeah, a little bit behind. So, and we can talk about US florals in a minute because that's just a whole new
Oh,
level. But
okay. This
um,
might be a 5 hour episode.
I honestly, Kelly, I think me and you could do an entire podcast, just the two of us together. We haven't
Oh,
even touched on wedding disasters or horror stories or
I've
anything.
literally asked you one question. I've got like
One
28
question
others.
and we're off. But okay, so let me tell you what happened. So it was so funny. This girl, she, made a come with me to tour my wedding venues and I'll show you the venues that I didn't pick. So that's the part now is I'll show you the venues I didn't
And
pick
why?
and why.
Oh
So,
my God, this is
uh-huh.
this is tough.
Yeah. So she toured hilariously all three of my North venues.
In the
Hackness,
UK.
well, yeah, in the UK. So Danby Castle, Hackness, Grange, and then she actually booked Rushpool Hall.
Ah.
So I won 1 out of 3. But I'm like invested watching this, and it's really interesting. And she's saying why she didn't book Danby, and then she's saying why she didn't book Hackness. And like Hackness was a legitimate reason. It was the function room was too big. She was having a more intimate wedding, which is also something we should touch on. And at Danby, it just didn't give them the feels. It wasn't for them, which is fine. And then Rushpool was the one that she booked, which was great. Now that one was it was okay. There was a few parts where I was watching it and I was like, oh, at Danby, like, okay, maybe we could change this or we could change that. But honestly, the thing that I noticed from that, and then someone else did another one which included Highfield Hall, which they actually did book Highfield, but when they were doing the pan of the room, what was so interesting is at one of the venues in the north and then in the Highfield, they were in the middle of a room flip. So she's come in right at the point where they've gone, okay, good. We had a food tasting yesterday. That's gone out. It's the morning. We're now setting up. So we're not set up. We're now setting up for the food tasting the next day, or we're setting up for the wedding next day, or
Oh,
whatever it
whatever
was.
it was.
Like,
Mhm.
for whatever reason, there was no decor. There was tables with tablecloths on, but like there was no decor. And on one of them, it's really funny. She does a pan like this, and there's white tablecloths, and she even says they've just had a food tasting or a
Yeah.
Valentine's or whatever it
Mm.
was, and they're now setting up, and there's like white tablecloth, and then there's a tablecloth on top of the white tablecloth, and I'm like,
Oh.
oh,
The thing is, this is real life, right?
yeah,
And
and
certainly
I'm like, wow,
for,
that's out there to see, and it's like,
you know,
the
and if
kind of
that's
thing.
the time they could squeeze her in, and that was the only time she could do, and like
She was a 9 a.m. tour, and they just,
we can't have our venues set 100% of the time because hotels always say this to me, right? Like, well, what if we've got a conference on it? Look, we know it's not going to convert as well, but if that's when the couple can come in, we got
yeah.
to do it, right?
But it's so interesting because now I obviously am going back to managers, to cohorts, to people, and I'm like, no, I'm like, this has to, we're now going to have to adjust. Like, it's one thing
Wow.
to have a couple come through, but it's another thing to have it immortalized on TikTok.
Yeah, because that is, you don't know how many future couples
Oh, it's
will
got
be put
thousands of views.
off,
It's got something ridiculous like 150,000 views as well. And you're like,
and you've got
oh,
zero control of the content going out. Like, control freak.
none whatsoever. But also as well, it's funny, like there's in the US, there was a girl that's basically doing a whole piece and she's saying, oh, let's take the wedding brochure for this venue and let's talk about what's included. And so she's basically just taking Florida wedding venues and she's discussing what they charge and what's included. And obviously I'm like, oh, there's my brochure. And she's discussing what's in charge and what's included. And I'm very transparent and
Yeah,
I'm very much like, this is how much
yeah,
it costs.
yeah. We're on the same page with that, right? We want to be super clear to people.
Super clear. There's no added, yes, you can upgrade your wine if you want to, but that's a personal choice.
Yeah.
I remember when I purchased one of my venues, we were discussing like what they included and what they didn't. And as we were walking around, they were like, oh, and if they want to have the barn heated, it's an additional £500. And I was like, what happens in the middle of the wedding if they decide they're cold? They're like, oh, we don't turn the heating on unless they pay the £500. I mean,
Ouch!
expecting the bride in her wedding dress to be handing you a credit card for £500 to turn
No,
the heating on. And I was like,
no.
that's crazy.
I do think that's a slight difference with the US market and the UK market that I see. We typically bundle things into packages, everything you need. And a lot of the US is still very much like you get the ground.
You
And
get
if
the
you want a
ground, and if
table,
you
if
want
you
the
want a
staircase,
chair,
it's $200. If you want the fire turned on, it's $150.
yeah.
If you want the bridal suite, it's another $1,000.
But I'm
They
seeing a
definitely
little
stack.
change now. Like certainly the US venues
But
we
they
work with
have
starting to
to.
bundle.
Yeah, they're gonna have to because also what's happening now is people are going on socials and calling them out.
Yeah. And
And
it
so
feels
that's also another
mean.
TikTok
It
thing.
feels mean, right?
Yeah. I
It's
mean,
like
it
if
is.
I buy a mascara for 10 quid and then you're going to charge me 3 quid for the postage and packing, I won't buy it. But if you'd
Yeah,
have just said the mascara's 13 and we'll send it to you free of charge, I'm like, boom, I'm in.
100%. And that was another TikTok I saw was someone touring wedding venues, and she basically toured this one wedding venue, and she was like, "Oh," the owner was like, "Oh, here's this room," and she's like, "Okay, well, how much more is it to have that room?" And the owner was like, "Oh no, that's included in the rental." And then they go upstairs, and she's like, "Here's the bedrooms," and she's like, "Oh, well, how much more is it to have the bedrooms?" And the owner's like, "No, that's in the rental." Anyway,
Oh,
this continues, and then the owner ends up turning around to her and being like, "Who hurt you? Like, what's
oh,
happening here?" And it
so
was just, she
true.
was just like, no, like she was calling the wedding industry predatory. And I was like, that's actually, it's awful, but I can also see the funny
Get it,
side of it of
get
like,
it.
yeah, she's already been on all of these tours, and there's like all these hidden add-ons, whereas she's just gone to this venue that's like, here's the price, it's all included.
But
And
everyone's
then
so
she's questioning.
fearful of giving that all-in price because they feel like it looks too expensive. And I think the States is in that shift right now, right? Whereas like, well, if we now say it's 50 grand, the couples don't realize it's 50 grand because you've got all of this stuff, like all the accommodation, all the food, all the whatever. And it's like this guy down the road is going to say it's $5,000. Yeah, but by the time you end up spending, you're going to be at 75,000.
Yeah, and that's an unfortunate thing that couples have to navigate. And we talk about, we call it the spreadsheet wedding venue, where it's like you literally need a spreadsheet to calculate what the final cost is going to be. Now, you talk obviously very openly about having tiers and having different, I structure my tiers slightly differently. I don't do a tier for Saturday. I don't have 3 tiers for Saturday, but I have tiers in the sense of like, well, you can get married on Monday through Friday or Monday through Wednesday at this price. We've got Thursday and Friday at this price, and then Saturday is this price. So, that's kind of how we have the bigger
But
packages
it's
and the
all
smaller
in. Like
packages.
people can see they get what they need.
Yeah,
Sam,
100%.
did you always want to be in weddings?
I don't think I think subconsciously I always wanted to be in weddings. I don't think I realized until I was in my 20s.
Oh. What
Because
did you do before that? What were you doing until you were in your 20s and suddenly weddings came to be a thing?
I was all over the show. So literally all over the show. So when I was I think my first touch with weddings was when I was about 5, and I realized that if I could convince people to let me be bridesmaids, I get pretty dresses. So there was a local church, and I realized they do a lot of weddings. And I think by the time I was 12, I'd been a bridesmaid about 9 times.
Love it.
Yeah, so that was my first experience. As a kid, I grew up with my mum, and my mum was super into like jumble sales and things like that. So I was constantly, we'd arrive at a jumble sale and I would go for the dressing up. Like I had a big dressing up box, so I was always into dressing up. So definitely, me and big dresses is a thing.
If anyone follows your Instagram account, we're
Yes.
always seeing you in a ball gown.
I
This
am
woman
often
will
in a
find
ball
any
gown.
reason to wear a ball gown.
I'm in a ball gown. Like if it's like, oh, black tie event, everyone's in this slinky, beautiful thing. It's like I am in a full ball gown. It's true. Any excuse. So that was that. Then I think when I got into my about 12, 13, I was, saying to my mum, like, it's about time you got married. And my mum was like, it's not happening. So she kind of redirected my attention to, okay, well, why don't you design me a wedding dress? And I think for the next 3 years, just for fun, I would design wedding dress, bridesmaids dresses, and we would go to places like, I think it was called, I forget what it was called, but there was a shop in town, and you have like the books that you can flick through, and then you can then pick the designs, and you can kind of walk out with
Like the pattern.
I've lost all my words. Thank you.
The pattern. I know what you mean. Like a haberdashery where you buy the pattern and then you go home and make it. Not that I've ever done that, by the way. I do not have that skill set.
I don't have that skill set either, but so every season they would change the books. And so when they changed the books, we would go in there and I would take away the books from the last season because they didn't want them. They'd bin them in these huge big books with all these designs, and quite often they had a big bridal section in them. Anyway, so that was that. 14, my mum put me in drama school. I went to Brit school. And I actually wanted to do set design and stagecraft, but they cancelled the course at the last minute, and they said, well, you still have a place here, but you need to go pick something else. So I was already too advanced in dance. I had a saxophone. I was like, I'm not carrying it to Croydon every day. So music was out. I'm too lazy. So then I went for drama, which was great because I feel like that gave me a life confidence. I feel like everybody should do drama. It should just be written. Yeah, see, you can tell. Definitely a drama student here.
Give me a microphone, give me a stage. I can't sing, but I have
can't sing
all
either.
of the balls to get up there.
100%. So yeah, so that was that. And then I ended up in London College of Fashion.
Wow.
I'm not really sure why. I went to do a styling and photography course. I think through Brit School, I decided I wanted to be a fashion stylist. I did work experience in Bliss Heat and New Woman magazine. Went to London College of Fashion, did a styling and photography course. Realized honestly that the fashion industry is not for me.
Why was that?
I was on a photo shoot, and the model that was on the photo shoot, we'd rented out this huge, it was kind of like a London pub on 3 floors, but it was specifically designed for photo shoots. So you could see they were making their money having it designed for amazing shoots. I think at the time I was working for New Women magazine, and I was working in the closet. So you literally look after all the clothes. And I'd been invited on the fashion shoot, and the model couldn't have been much older than about 16. She didn't speak any English, like nothing.
Wow.
And I remember watching her and they were like changing her and she literally just put her arms up and was like letting them change her outfits. There was a massive spread of food everywhere. And I think from watching her, she pretty much spent the whole day smoking and drinking coffee. Now,
Wow.
obviously, this was, in the
Like,
2000s.
yeah, exactly.
So it was like, eating disorders
Yeah.
rife. Kate
Yeah.
Moss, nothing tastes as good as skinny feels.
Yeah.
And I just looked at it and I was like, I've always been a size 12 plus, currently probably more a 16. I've never been skinny. I've always, I do battle with my weight 100%. You've known me at various different sizes. I go up and down depending on how stressed I am. And, I kind of just looked at it and I was like, this is not an industry that I feel comfortable in.
Wow.
And also concurrent to that, it was so cutthroat. I was working jobs in a pub in the evenings and weekends in order to be able to afford to be on my internship with them. And I had to leave at 5:30. And there were other girls there that mummy and daddy were like paying for them to be there. And they were able to stay till 6 or 7. And in the end, they basically turned around to me and said, well, these girls are willing to stay here longer, so we're not going to keep you. And I was like, surely the fact that I have the work ethic to be working in a pub in the evenings and weekends to be able to pay for my train fare to be here for free. I wasn't living at home. I had a flat at the time with a couple of people. I was like, surely you can see this is,
The effort.
out of
Yeah,
the
what
three of
you're
us,
doing. Yeah.
I'm the one that will be here till midnight if you just pay for my train fares. That's all I'm asking. Just pay for my train fares. And they were like, no.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was like, I was about to swear, I won't swear. Like I'm done with the fashion industry. Like this is not for me. But that was how I fell into photography. So
Ah, okay.
I'd done photography on the course. I kind of came out of the fashion industry, was like, forget it. I got a job in HR as an HR assistant because I was like, I'm broke.
Mhm.
Um, so I basically was doing that job. I then got a taste for money. And I was like, oh, I've got some cash and I can go out on the weekends and I can go on holiday. And like, I actually, for the first time in forever, have some money myself.
Yeah.
And so I did that for a while. And then my uncle was really ill. He had cancer in the end everywhere. And he sat me and my cousin down in Brighton and basically said to us, look, I'm in my 50s. I could have done all these things. I've had a business. It runs by itself. Like, I could have done all these things and I didn't, and I'm gonna die. And we were like, oh, that's really bad,
Yeah.
obviously. And so then he kind of was like, go and do something that you really are passionate about. And it's really funny because the next day I was walking to work and I was walking across this bridge and it's one of those like epiphany, like cliche movie,
Yeah.
like you wouldn't believe it happened until it
Yeah.
happened to you. And I looked
Yeah.
out across the bridge and I was like, I hate my job. And I was like, I'm gonna start a photography business. Bearing in mind, I didn't even own a camera back then. And the first camera I had bought was 3 megapixels. It was £400. Because I was right in that move from film to digital.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I need to, do this. And I arrived at work and I quit. And I was like, I'm giving you my notice. They're like, what are you going to do? I was like, I'm going to start a photography business. And they're like, do you even have a camera? And I was like, no. I was like, but it's fine. I'll figure
But
it
you
out.
know what? Sometimes when we have zero to lose almost, those are the
Nothing.
best times because you're like, I'm gonna make this happen, yes or yes. There's no other choice, right?
Exactly. And like I said, I'm already familiar with hard work. Like I'm already familiar at that point with working a 9 to 5, working
Yeah.
evenings. I'd never dropped my pub job
Oh,
at that
perfect.
point. So I'd always kept a couple of shifts.
Yeah.
So and for me, working in a pub was clever because you get to be out socializing without spending any money.
Yeah, exactly. You're talking to
Great.
people, you're out, and it stops you going out in the evenings because you're there
Completely.
and you've got a bit of cash coming in. So that's perfect, right?
Yeah. So at the point that I quit the job, I then got, I kept one of the pub jobs and then I got a job in a boarding school a couple of nights a week. So that I had my days free again.
Wow.
But that was always
Good.
my thing. If I worked evenings and weekends, I had my days free. And that was where I then, I mean, I contacted my friend's dad, who I knew had a camera, and he sold it to me. And then I taught myself Photoshop, and then I grabbed every child I could find and was like, oh, I'll do a photo shoot with your kid to like build. I honestly, I had no idea what I was doing. Like photographers today would be
Learn by doing.
mortified with how I started.
But you know what? Learn by doing. That's how I learned
Learn by
weddings. Nobody
doing.
taught me. They were like, hey, here's some couples. Off you go.
Yeah,
Okay.
100%. And I think if you're
Learn by
ballsy enough
doing.
to just give it a go, you can. And I think like a month or two in, someone was like, "Oh, I'm shooting a local wedding. Do you want to come and be a second shooter?" So I was like, "Yeah, okay, fine." And so I did that. And then obviously, like I said, I've been a bridesmaid however many times. So I had already an idea of how the day was going to go. Like it wasn't oh, I don't know how this is going to happen. Like I already had an idea. Good, they get married, they do group photos, da, 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 da. And obviously by that point, I'd also been to a few weddings as an adult. Um, so I did that. And then honestly, I was just overconfident. I was like, I can do this. And I put a post in a Facebook group being like, hey, I'm a new photographer. If someone gives me 200 quid, I'll come and shoot your wedding. I know, again, photographers are dying in their graves
Yeah,
right
but
now.
you know what? You were ballsy enough. You went for it. You put out a
Oh, I
post. How
shot the
many
whole
people
wedding on
went?
automatic with a pop-up flash.
Love it.
But actually, the pictures are not that bad. Hilarious. Um,
Perfect. And you'd said I'm a new photographer. You're not trying
yeah,
to
yeah,
say
yeah.
you're like
No,
the
they
most
knew what they were
experienced.
getting.
Yeah.
They knew what they were getting, and it was back in the day where you made everything black and white and then made the pictures in color, like just, awful trend, but actually amazing at the time. And that was it. I was off.
Okay, so hold on. Whoa, whoa, whoa. So we're like, we've gone from I'm gonna start a photography business with my couple of £100 booking to owning 12 venues across the
Well,
world. Like
that was
that's
an
a big
accident.
that,
That wasn't on the
I mean,
life
this is
plan. That was
quite
an
the jump.
accident.
This is quite the jump. How do we bridge these two pieces?
Okay, so probably 10 years in doing wedding photography, there was honestly a part of me that was starting to resent it. And I was starting to resent it not because, I love doing the weddings, I really enjoyed it, but I honestly was starting to resent it because, my husband played cricket and his cricket team thought I was fictional
Yeah.
because
We
I
don't have
never had a
weekends in
Saturday.
weddings.
hmm
Yeah.
I missed a couple of my incredibly good friends. Like one of my oldest school friends got married, and I turned up to her wedding at about 10 o'clock at night
Yeah.
because I was shooting someone else's wedding. Um, you know,
I
the,
feel your pain. I mean, absolute same thing I did for 20 years. And you don't when
yeah,
you're doing it, it's fine, right? You're like, it's okay. I love my clients. I love my work. But then eventually, year after year after year of sacrificing your own things,
yeah.
there comes a moment, right?
And that was for me, it was coming a moment, I'd gotten engaged. I was thinking about the future. I had set my business up under my name, which actually now speaking to other photographers, whenever they're talking about doing a photography business, I'm like, don't set the business up under your name. Because if you set the business up under your name, it's you.
Yeah.
And they won't accept anyone else coming.
No.
So that was kind of the error I'd made. And
But you couldn't really branch out. You couldn't hire team members because they wanted you. Yeah.
they wanted me. And I do know some people in America that have done it. And I kind of
It's
was
hard
looking,
though.
it's really hard. Because yeah, it's just really hard.
Yeah.
And then also the trust as well to send someone else to shoot a
Yeah.
wedding. I just didn't have that level of trust.
Yeah.
And so all of those things together were starting to be like, okay, how do I navigate? So I actually had set up a portrait studio and a newborn photography studio because you could do a newborn shoot on a Saturday in the morning and have the
Or a
rest of the day
Tuesday morning.
or a Tuesday morning. Yeah, or any morning. And also as well, like you can get newborn clients quite quickly. Because people often don't think about it until they're about 8 months pregnant, or they literally have the baby and then suddenly are like, I need to get photos.
That's true. That's kind of what happened to us. We were like, oh, we had a baby. We should probably do a little photo shoot.
100%. So like the jobs were coming in quickly, whereas with
Yeah,
the
so they're like
photography with the
last
wedding,
minute. That's nice.
yeah. So
Mm.
I was minding my business happily, having my little studio, and then being like, okay, I'm gonna do about 10 weddings a year. That was kind of my thing. Like I'll have the studio, I'll do about 10 weddings a year. I was also shooting boxing, which is a whole other conversation. And
You were
so that was
shooting
my
boxing?
three. Yeah, like bang bang boxing.
Okay.
And
Newborns boxing, very similar niche.
That was my three. Newborns, weddings, boxing. Like I had my three. It was pretty stable. The boxing
Do
shows
you
were
like
stable.
boxing? Is that something you enjoy?
Um, I I wouldn't watch it on telly. I I drew the line at MMA. They invited me to watch an MMA show to see if I could take over the contract for the MMA show, and I was like, absolutely not. I think the first fight I watched, someone like pulled someone else's arm out of their shoulder. I
Oh,
was like, I'm out.
no, I can't do that.
The
Yeah.
boxing that I did was white collar boxing, so it was more, although it was still filmed for Sky and everything like that, it was more like 3 to 6 rounds, not like 12 rounds of battering each other.
Okay, so how did we get to the
Anyway,
venues?
sorry, Kelly.
So we're still on the trajectory. We don't want to work every weekend. What's happening next?
Right. So then I met a couple at the National Wedding Show. I had a stand. I met a couple at the National Wedding Show. They were looking for a wedding venue. They were having 20 people and they kept finding wedding venues that were like, or hotels that were like, you can have one room and one room all day. And they were like, that's stifling. Like, we don't want to be stuck in one room just because we're being penalized just because we're having 20
Yeah.
people. And they had money, like a lot of money
Yeah,
as
they were
well.
happy to pay.
They were happy to pay. They would have hired out the whole place, but it just, anyway, that was how it was going. So they asked me to help them find a wedding venue because they'd noticed one of my pictures was Alexander House, and they were like, "Oh, we
Ah,
looked at that and we want something in that area." So 2 weeks later, they sent me an email. I'm in Starbucks, my little office, and I was quickly pulling up like U Lodge and different more intimate wedding venues that I knew of and putting it in the email because obviously I wanted the job. So I was trying to help them. If I get the
yeah.
venue, then hopefully I'll get the contract.
Sure.
And right at the last minute, I was just about to press send, and then I was like, "Oh, the Ravenswood." And I opened up their website, and it was down. So I still don't know what possessed me because I joke that I'm really not that nice, which is probably not true. But I called them to let them know that their website was down because I was like one small business to another. Like, let me give them a call and tell them, "Hey, your website's down. You should probably fix that." Um, and Steve, the previous owner, answered the phone and he just said hello. He didn't say hello, the Ravenswood. He literally
Mm.
just said hello. So then I was like, oh, I don't know.
Awkward.
Yeah. So I told him his website's down. He said, I know, I took it down. I said, what are you doing? And he said, I'm going fishing. So I was like, okay, what are you doing with the venue? And I just kept pressing. And eventually he said that, it was under sale. It was under offer with a company to turn it into flats. It just fallen through, and he was going to put it back on the market next week. And I was like, I'm going to call you back. And I just phoned Stuart, who's a long-term friend of mine. I worked with him many years ago. His mum is my sister's godmother. He's a serial entrepreneur. He's a little bit wild. You've met Stuart.
He's great.
Similar age to me. And I just phoned him and I was like, I found a
Can I
wedding
just say you
venue.
look way younger?
Oh, yeah, I do. I'm actually a
As
year
when
older
you said
and
that,
I
I
know
was
that
like,
you
oh,
look
really?
younger. Okay, we won't let
Okay,
him watch
so
this.
we
But
phoned
yeah.
you. Yeah, don't send him this. So you phoned Stu, and what do you say? You're just like, hey, there's this random venue I think you should buy.
Yeah, basically very overexcited. I was like, I found a wedding venue. You need to help me buy it. I can make this work. It's going to be amazing, but I don't have aside from the finances, I also don't have the credit or the weight. He already had the three or four businesses. So if we were going to a bank to get a mortgage, he's got some weight
Yeah.
behind it.
Mhm.
He's also a very good businessman, and
Sure.
I wasn't. So
Well, you would run a small business, but that's quite a different leap to a real
yeah,
venue, brick and mortar is what I'm talking
yeah,
about. Like a service business, I think smaller, it's more day to day, right? But really
really.
buying a building, like that's a whole nother thing.
Oh yeah, it's a whole nother thing, but it has a whole other host of problems. It's a 14th century building with a 21st century extension, and I cannot even begin to tell you what the cesspit and the roof have cost me. Anyway,
And so
so
was Stuart like, okay, this sounds interesting, or did he think you'd
oh,
get a bit
Stuart's
mad?
like, how much? And I'm like, I don't know, I forgot to ask.
Excuse me, can we buy this
And call
venue?
Steve back and be like, how much? Anyways, it was just really funny. And, me and Stuart had a lot of meetings of like, he was in the US at the time. So he then came back the following Tuesday, which was the day that Steve wanted to put it on the market. So I managed to convince Steve to wait until we'd had a look around. I picked Stuart up from the airport. Me and Stuart had talked about in the past, like getting a barn. So this wasn't a completely new concept to him.
Okay. Okay.
I
So there'd
talked
been
about
rumblings.
There've been grumblings. Like I talked to him about like a business park, like particularly in Sussex, there's a lot of business parks that were farms that have been turned into business parks with lots of offices. They usually have a random barn. And I was like, we could get a business park. You could have your people in the office in the week. I could run weddings on the weekend in the barn. Like that could be really fun. So we had
Okay.
a conversation. Anyways, I hadn't really sent him anything. So I just said, there's a wedding venue. I want to go have a look at it. He's like, okay. And as we're driving down the thing, like, Stuart's got quite a subtle, but definitely a Scottish accent. And in his little Scottish accent, he's like, Sam, this isn't a barn. Like,
Yeah.
what is this?
This is a whole estate for those who don't know Ravenswood.
It's a very, very imposing building, let's just say. And as you're driving down the drive, it's like it's long as well, and you see a lot of it. And I was like, I know, it's great, isn't it? And he's just like, so simple. Anyway, so that was quite funny. So obviously we're speaking to Steve. We have no idea how we're going to do it. People always say to me, they're like, oh, did Stuart just buy the venue? And it's like, at that time, Stuart, wasn't just buying a venue in cash. That's like quite a funny thing that I run into often is people think that Stuart just buys me venues in cash and I play with them. I'm like,
Yeah.
quite how it works. Anyway, so we managed to convince Steve to give us the keys, and we gave him £150,000 deposit that Stuart stole out of his VAT money for the other businesses.
No, we don't steal that money. We borrow it. We all do that in business. We borrow it out of that account for a little bit of cash flow occasionally, and then we put it back ready for the Batman.
Yeah. So obviously we had a certain amount of time to get it back. We gave Steve 150,000, no contracts, no nothing, just here's the cash. Handshake, man's handshake.
Wow.
And we told him we'd pay him 10 grand a month, and if we messed it up, we'd give it back to him. And he was like, yeah, cool.
Oh, wow. That is a bloody good deal. I like it.
Yeah. So obviously we had to get a mortgage, but we had to say to him, look, you've got no weddings. He'd cancelled every single wedding and every event. There was nothing on the books.
Right.
So we had to say to him, like, we're not going to get a mortgage like this. We're going to have to build it up. So we got the bank to come and have a look and talk to us. And the bank pretty much told us to our face they were not going to give us a mortgage. We had no experience. None of us had hotel experience. We had no, like, they were like, you are uninvestable. And I was like, okay, cool. So
have you been back to that person and been like, may I show you my collection of 12 venues?
So he did actually end up giving us the mortgage, and he gave us the mortgage because I went back to him 4 months later and was like, I've booked 60 weddings. I need a mortgage.
Yes.
And he kind of reluctantly, he still jokes to this day, I really should not have given you that mortgage. And he did. And he has given us a mortgage on multiple other venues. We then got too big and moved into corporate. He has jokes many a times that, he still thought we were uninvestable, but I was just so like, but I've done all of this. I need a mortgage. And he was just like, oh, okay, fine. Like, I suppose we could always sell the building if it goes wrong.
Yeah, I mean, that is the one good thing, right? About having, you've got the collateral there.
Yeah.
So look, now you've got quite a big team under you. Like, this is, again, a whole nother level, a whole different playing field of managing this whole ecosystem that you've now created. What do you do? What things do you have in place to keep your team like well motivated, well valued? Because I know that's important to you. You're not just there like, I want my people turning up 9 to 5. Like, you want their commitment, you want their passion. How do you pull that from your team?
That's a really good question. I have got a really big team.
How many do you even know how many people are in your team at this point?
No.
Rough
Honestly,
guess?
no. No, I'm joking. Obviously, it changes every week depending on how many weddings, because a lot of people are on 0 hours contracts, and obviously, I've waiting staff, etc.
Yeah.
I'd say I've got like a core team of a couple of hundred.
Yeah.
And then it can go up to anywhere of around about 600 in the summer. Then down to probably about 300 to 400 in the winter. We close in January, pretty much every venue for renovations. Except for in the US. Then we close in August because it's too hot in August.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
It's a constantly moving, evolving. But yeah, we have been up to, sort of 600 staff, and that obviously takes a lot to manage. But more importantly, we had 91% five-star reviews last year, and I did 2,500 weddings. So
Incredible.
beyond incredible. Like I was actually mind boggled myself.
Yeah.
And then the ones that weren't five stars, some of them were four, and you always get the odd.
None of us. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Of course, 100%. But there must be core cultural
Oh yeah, sorry, I
messaging
digress.
that no, you're fine. That's going through to your team because that doesn't happen by accident. Such a big team across two countries, like it would be easy to lose your core values, right?
Yeah, but I think, we really set like what the ethos is of the company. We really worked hard on that. We worked hard on like what the goals are of the company. We worked hard on what the ethos is. We worked hard on the taglines. We worked very hard on the kind of, and I also let my head office team develop and create that. I also work really hard to empower the people underneath me so that they are empowered to make decisions. And I'm very good at saying like, okay, fine, I don't understand why we would do that, or yes, I've said to do this, but actually I'm wrong. And I have it particularly with my head office staff and my general managers that they are allowed to approach me and say, okay, look, we don't agree with this, or we think we should do this in a different way. We also have a monthly survey that goes to all of the staff's personal emails, so it's their payroll email. And I also have a red flag and a green flag system. So, for example, if they are seeing something that they think is bad in the venue, they are able to write a red flag up to HR. That can either be anonymous or not anonymous, but they are able
Wow, that's
to
incredible. Like
communicate.
to allow people the freedom and actively encourage.
Yeah,
That's quite refreshing. I don't see,
yeah.
I work with a lot of the big hotel groups and I don't see a lot of that. Like we say, oh, do talk to us, my door's open. But how
No, no.
many
Like
wedding
I push for it.
coordinators would walk in an office of a CEO, right? It's too
Yeah,
scary. So
yeah.
you've given them genuine channels that they can communicate. That's incredible.
I've given them genuine channels they can communicate with. I also have things set up in a situation whereby there is a head office terminal that looks after pockets. So, for example, like at head office, I have a lead coordinator, and her job is to train all of the coordinators. So she also is able to communicate directly into the venues to
Yeah.
all the coordinators. I have someone that looks after the general managers, I have someone that looks after the sales, and then I have someone that looks after the estates team.
Yeah.
So I
So
kind
good.
of have it so that everybody is, and then we cycle through the venues. Like, for example, I was just at the venues yesterday, 2 days ago. We cycle through the venues so that sometimes the sales team are there, sometimes the ops manager's there, sometimes I'm there, sometimes the estates manager's there. It's not always been perfect. I've made mistakes in the past. But this is the sort of system that we're running now. And I also, I have a bit of a joke of the type of people that I really want to hire. And particularly in the US, I'm like, just find me a Disney princess. You know? And obviously that's not it's a joke. It's not a requirement, but that that obviously helps. It's like, I want people coming into the venue, male and female, that are passionate about weddings. They have to be passionate about, most of my staff feedback, particularly from my cohorts, is, they just love what they do. And I really do make it clear that at the point that you don't love what you do, then it's time to move on.
Yeah.
And, that's the time where it's like, no, no, we need to move on. I'm also really hot on, negativity needs a friend.
Mm.
And this for me is a big thing. I really push with the staff, like the idea of the cart, you're pushing a cart up the hill. It's like, is everybody pushing the cart up the hill, or are some people sitting on top of the cart? Are some people putting their finger on when you're licking and then taking it off when you're not licking?
That's an interesting analogy. I haven't heard that before.
It's really good. It's actually on YouTube. It's I think it's Proforma that if you put in Proforma cart, it's like a recruitment company and they created it. And then the last clip of the video is this team looking really smart with like helmet, goggles, whatever, pushing the cart up the hill and they're like racing past. And
Mm.
then the original team that was like not very good, they then end up, racing as well and beating the one that was racing. It's a whole thing, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's very visual. You can show it to your team, and I show it to the team at the summits. Like we do a yearly summit where we get all of the employed staff together, and I show it to them there, and I'm like, I want to know who's not pushing the cart up the hill.
Yes.
Like I want to know who those people are. And it's really funny because sometimes like, we've shown the video and then an hour later, like someone explodes in the car park and someone comes running in and they're like, he's not pushing the cart up the hill. And you're like, yes, I can see that.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yeah,
That's a really strategic, clear, straightforward way of gathering your troops, right? When you've got
yeah,
so many venues and so many people.
yeah. But
What?
I think, oh, sorry.
No, no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think I also, we were joking before this started. I'm like, I am a type B creative CEO. I left my makeup bag at home. I have no mascara on. That is me down to the ground in terms of who I am as a person. And I follow all these incredible CEOs and they're in their stilettos and da da da, and they're like, their suits, and I can admire it. I cannot do it. We have a joke, Michael and Tony who have worked for me forever. I adore them. They wear suits to work every day. And Michael jokes, he's like, men in suits work for women in pajamas because sometimes that's just how I rock up.
Well, listen, having spent half of my career in the very top ultra luxury hotels of the world, the richest, most famous people, they are hanging out in those hotels in their sweatpants,
yeah.
practically in pajamas. They are not trying to impress it. Now, you and I also have, I know, a similar thought process in terms of front-facing staff and that they should be
A million
polished.
percent. Front-facing staff are not turning up in pajamas.
Exactly,
Absolutely.
like that's a whole nother thing. But I get it, right? You are not standing in front of that couple doing the tour. You're sitting in
No.
your office dealing with your team.
Yeah, precisely. But then I think that also when it then comes to the team, like, I just did Hackness, then Rushpool, then Danby.
Did you go in
And
a ball gown?
no, I didn't. I should have worn a ball gown. But like, Hackness, I think I turned up, day one, I had like a suit jacket on and da 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 da. It's like by the time I got to Danby, I had tracksuit bottoms on. And I was like, I'm not even apologizing. I'm just telling you this is how I'm rolling right this second because we've done 4 nights away. I stayed up too late. We ate too much good food, like whatever. And I just like by the last day, I was like unraveled. But what's really funny is that that's what I think then helps to resonate with the staff because when I'm talking to them, one of the things that I say often to my staff is, I am as nervous to meet you as you are to meet me.
Ah.
Like, I hate the deer in headlights look when I arrive in a venue and everyone's like standing there deer in headlights. And it's like, look, I get it. I have a higher role, a bigger capacity for randomity and etc. But honestly, I just want to know, like, how was the date you went on last night? And like, how are your kids and what's happening? And, how are the couples? And what was your biggest challenge in weddings? And, I've got all these systems in place. What works? What doesn't? Tell me about it. So I've kind of adapted now to when I arrive at a venue, getting them all together. And that's kind of how I start. Like, I am as nervous to be sitting here in front of you as you are to be sitting here in front of me. So let's just get that out of the way. Okay, good. Yes, I'm wearing trackies and a Gilchrist hoodie to try to make it look like it's part of the style. But honestly, the truth is I packed an hour before I traveled and I didn't pack well. So this is what you're getting right now.
Dan, what are some of the life lessons, this journey that you've been on to this point? And obviously, there's so much still ahead of you. But to this point, like, what are some of the big life lessons, business lessons that really stand out for you?
I think some of the business and life lessons for me have been not to care what other people think. I think that honestly is starting to become my biggest strength that I've had to overcome. We've talked about it before. It's like imposter syndrome is real. I'm just a girl from a council estate. Like, what am I doing sitting here? And that is where I've kind of had to go in my mind and be like, okay, good. Actually, I do deserve to be sitting a seat at this table. And when I do meet other influential people or other people in the wedding industry, in the beginning, I was sort of very nervous and, I would feel quite insecure about things. And I think that's a natural progression. Anyone that grows, it's a natural progression. I've grown very quickly in 8 years, and then I've had to learn to be able to stand in the boots that I've created. So I think that's something for, people honestly, one of the other, like on that vein, like one of the things I've had to do is I've had to stop and look. And it's like, okay, good, stop. Look at what you've created. Good, stop. Look at the reviews. Stop. Look at the pictures. I have WhatsApp groups, and every day the pictures from the weddings go into the WhatsApp groups to remind me, okay, this is what we're creating. Because also sometimes on the CEO role, all you hear is the bad news.
And you're so far from that one couple who got married today.
Yeah,
Right. But
100%.
that's where your heart is. And
Mhm.
so seeing those, oh, look, my team got these guys married today. Like that must keep it real for you.
Totally keeps it real. I have one day I will get it. I joke about having a wall in my office with TVs on it, so at 2 o'clock I can watch every wedding because between 1 and 2 o'clock most of the weddings happen in the UK. I was like, it would just be so fun to like watch the weddings.
Love it.
For me, my passion and my heart is in that moment where they're now pronounced the new whatever their names are, and they have a little kiss, and then it's that moment where they look back at all their family and friends and their whole faces lit up like we did it. And that's the moment that I live for in this industry. And so yeah, to have it, I mean, everything would go to a standstill, but to be able to watch the weddings every day would be really fun.
And so when it comes to boundaries for yourself, I imagine with so many venues, so
Don't
much
have any.
team, like, no, you must have some, there
I'm
must
just
be
kidding.
some non-negotiables for you that it's like, I don't know, I'm always asleep at this time, or I always have to do this thing. Like, what's some of those boundaries that keep you functioning, sane, well?
I try to make sure that people take responsibility for their job role.
Mm.
So they can come to me with any problem, but I want the solution. Like, I don't want an email that says, oh, we've been contacted by this magazine. This is how much it costs. What do you want to do?
Oh,
For an advert. I want an email saying, I've been contacted by this magazine. This is how much it costs. This is what their readership is. These are the prices for the advert. And I would recommend we go for advert number 2 because it's not really what we want, but in the area we would love to have, just visual, like we're just doing it for visual. Or I don't think we should go for it, but I wanted to run it past you first. So I'm always training my staff to present a solution with the problem.
mm.
And then I also have a policy where it's like no one can get in trouble for doing something wrong. They just need to say, like, obviously there's certain consequences where it's like, okay,
Sure.
we're going to have to navigate this one.
Yeah.
And obviously there are situations where it's like, okay, you are going to have to like, I can't say that I can't terminate someone's contract because they've done something like really terrible, but
Sure.
it's more of a point of like the person that finds it, like if it's underneath them, then it's like, okay, well, you need to speak up and you need to speak up quickly, and then we're going to help you fix it.
Yeah.
And I very much go on a production
Mm.
basis. I think you've seen it, like all of my sales stats, I can tell you how many inquiries it took to get a tour, how many tours it took to get a booking, and how much that booking costs in inquiries, how much money I spent on it, etc.
So good.
So good. But then I can also tell you per salesperson what their conversion rate is, how many they're booking, where they're at, where do I want them to be, da, 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 da. And then it's the
And
same
so
thing with
many
delivery.
venues, whether they've got one or five or 50, do not track that data properly. When I go into venues, that they rarely have much more than a very basic level of data, which isn't telling them very much at all.
And that for me baffles me because I am so data driven.
We have
Um,
to be.
You have to be. I'm so data driven, but like so much also to the point that I'm like, okay, good. There was a spike here in sales. what promo did we send out? What happened? What went viral on TikTok? Da, 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 da. Like, how do we recreate that to have that spike? And that for me is that something that causes the death of a venue is the staff. I'll never, ever, ever forget. I'm very particular about having the sales consultants are the sales consultants and the coordinators are the coordinators. And again, we've spoken about this. Me and Kelly go to spa days together.
Don't tell our husbands.
Yeah, don't tell our husband.
We were working. That was a work day.
Business meeting. But I will never forget the day that I went to look around the venue. A local venue invited us to have a tour because honestly, they wanted to have a tour from us, and I much prefer that. I'm like, come on.
Oh yeah, don't pretend to be a bride. Yeah, just be normal.
Just be normal. Don't pretend to be a bride. Our doors are open. Come and have a look.
Yeah.
So then in exchange, we were like, oh, cool. Can we come and have a look at you? And they were like, yeah, awesome. So we went to have a look around.
I love it. You show me yours, I'll show you mine.
Yeah, totally. And the lady that was touring us did the sales and also did the delivery. And she said, I quote, my boss, the general manager, wants me to book 70 weddings a year, but I don't want to, because I don't want to lose that many Saturdays. Yeah. Therefore, I keep it around 45. They went bankrupt a year later.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that's fascinating.
This so much because it's human nature. Why would I put more on my plate if I don't earn more, if I don't get more, if it only affects me negatively, no matter how good a person I am or how good I am at my job, it's like our brains will not allow it.
Right. But if someone was statusizing her sales, they would statisize her sales and they would be like, right, she's off target for the year. She's not selling what's needed and wanted. And basically they would either move her just into being a coord because she was clearly good at that, and then bring someone else into sales, or whatever they needed to do. But it was like, they're obviously not tracking. And if they are tracking, they're not confronting.
They're not looking at it. But I also think this is a very typical problem, right? Where we think, okay, we'll just put one person in, she'll handle all the inquiries, all the tours, all the planning, and she'll turn up on the day. And look, I did that, right? I did that.
I did it too.
But there's a limit to how many you can do like that.
There's 100% a limit. There's 100% a limit as to how passionate you can be about it, knowing also when you're sitting looking at the calendar and you're looking at August and you've got one Saturday left and you know that you've got weddings Thursday, Friday, Saturday and Sunday every weekend in August and you've got one Saturday left and they're like, I want that one. In your mind, you're almost turning around being like, oh, sorry, it's already reserved for someone else. You can't have it. Because you're going, oh my gosh, I can't do that. I can't deliver that many weddings.
But so many owners and managers, they're not looking at the team in that way. And it's not, I don't even blame the team for it. It's the senior leaders not looking at what's happening to their team. They're just expecting people to just do it.
100%. And for me, that's also something that I find really interesting in the sense of, my 3 biggest venues deliver over 300 weddings a year.
Wow.
Yeah. And I have it set up so that the staff are...
I just want to clarify because people will think you mean 100 weddings per one at each venue.
Oh, so no, sorry, 300 each. So 900
because
weddings.
Lots of venue owners, teams will literally be like, well, 100, that's what people do, right? So you're saying 300 weddings at one venue, and you've done that across 3 of your venues.
Yeah, and I've got 2 not far behind.
Wow. I mean, those are some serious results. And whilst keeping the standards.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a really serious result.
Yeah. But that's how I keep the standard. And I keep the standard. Oh, and by the way, I use Kelly for sales training. But that's how I keep the standard, is I keep the standard by creating an almost boring situation. Yeah. So I have enough wedding coordinators that they never do more than 2 weddings a week. In those big venues. On the climb up, no, it can be a bit of a, it's hard to manage the staff as you're climbing. But once you get to the 300 weddings a year, it's like they don't do more than 2 weddings a week. And if they're doing a third, it's because they're covering someone to go on holiday and it's a rare occasion and then they'll get it back. I have it set up so that, it's so clockwork. It's like everybody comes in and they know that the first thing they do when they arrive is they're putting the Prosecco glasses out for the Toast. So the only thing changing is the style of the wedding and the people. And so when, someone comes running downstairs and says, the bride won't leave the bridal suite, she doesn't want to walk down the aisle, she's freaking out. Not because she doesn't want to get married, but because she doesn't want everyone to look at her,
Yeah.
which happens.
Yeah.
The wedding coordinator is like, oh yeah, okay, that happens, and just pops upstairs and it's like, it's okay, we've seen this before, we can do this, da, 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 da. Or if something particularly bad is happening at the wedding, or like someone's struggling and, things happen,
Sure. It's life.
there's an office full of people that can get up and come over to the venue and be there to support. And also because we only do weddings, there's no attention on spa guests, hotel guests, restaurants.
That's helpful. That is helpful,
So helpful.
right?
Yeah. Every
And
so
how
often
are you tracking the feedback from your couples?
it's like all my secrets.
Are you
I
just
check
getting it off Google? Like, is it just anything Google?
no, so every wedding, once the wedding is completely finished and they've gone home, they get an after wedding feedback form.
Yeah, perfect.
And
And
they
does
get an
that
after
come to
wedding.
you? You're the one like seeing those?
I don't see it. Like it doesn't come physically to me. It lands in, because I'd be looking a lot. We do a
Yeah, no,
lot.
for sure. I mean, yeah, we're talking about thousands of weddings a year.
Thousands of weddings. It lands in a spreadsheet. So every feedback form lands in a spreadsheet. And then the person at here, who's like the lead coord over all the venues, she gets them all. So she gets all the UK ones. There's someone in the US that gets all the US ones.
And
And
they're feeding back to you like, this is what's working. This is something that I need to flag to you.
yeah, sorry, my dog's doing something weird and my PA
We
is
can't
running
hear
across the
him.
room
Don't
to try
worry. We
and
can't hear
rescue.
him.
So Katie, one of the things Katie does is every time there is a bad review, because it happens, or
Of
if there
course.
is bad feedback, then it comes to me. And also someone else with this is what happened and this is what the manager is doing about it. So, because I want to see it.
Yeah.
If it's just like, oh, I didn't really like the room. Sometimes I get complaints like, well, there's no TV in the bedroom. And I'm like, you're supposed to be at a wedding. Like, I'm not putting a TV in every bedroom. They look ugly. Like, there's one in reception. If you really want it, reception will bring it up to you. But like, you're supposed to be at a wedding. You're not supposed
But
to be.
also I can live with it if that's the only thing you didn't love about this experience.
Yeah, like, don't really care.
I'm okay.
Obviously, if it's a cleanliness point or this or that, then it's like, then I want the team to look into it and find out what happened. I also do the same for the accommodation. So when someone checks out, they automatically get an email,
For the
marks up
guests
time.
as well, not just the wedding couple themselves. So you're getting a lot of genuine feedback across the board, which is so useful, right?
So useful. Also, the other thing that I do, I always laugh because sometimes you see suppliers that are like, oh, we're not entering the wedding industry awards because whatever their viewpoint is on the wedding industry awards. It's not often, but occasionally you see it. Like when people are like, oh, we're in the regionals, you'll then have like a shitty supplier comment somewhere about how they didn't enter it. And it's like, whatever you feel about it, I love it. You know me, I need an excuse to put a ball dress on.
Right.
And I love an award. We do all right in it. We enter every award system going, but actually that's not why I enter that system. I enter that system because in order to get into the regionals, you actually have to get something like 75% of your couples have to actually answer the survey. So it's also interesting. Like, I feel like people haven't really fully researched the wedding industry awards in terms of like what the criteria is. But 75% of your couples have to answer the survey for you to even make it. And then you have one more chance of making it, of being a wild card. But like, for me, I hammer it. I'm like, we are entering that awards. You are getting your couples. Like, I hammer my staff and I'm like, we're getting through to regionals. And I'm not getting through to regionals because I'm like, oh, I want to win. I'm getting through to regionals because if you make it through to regionals with 75% of your people answering, when the whole thing is finished, they send you the feedback.
Amazing.
And you get 75% feedback given to an external company.
Yeah.
So they're really brutal and they're really honest. And also on top of that, you get incredible quotes that you can then use for your marketing because they'll then do, incredible quotes. And it's like, to me, that's so valuable because that's an external company telling you this is what your couples thought about your wedding.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. That makes so much sense. If there was one thing you could change about this industry, what would that be?
Wow. If there was one thing I could change about this industry, what would that be? Um, oh gosh, that's a really big question. I think I have in the past, and I think it is still sometimes a thing. I found the wedding industry can be slightly cliquey.
Yep.
And I also have found that, you know, particularly when I was a photographer, it was definitely bitchy.
Mm.
Um, and, it was kind of like quite territorial as well. I don't not understand that. I do understand it. But, even I've been talking to some of my team about like, okay, we've got this cool head office at the moment. It's got quite a big sort of function space on it. Why don't we just get all the Sussex suppliers together and just have everyone together and be like, hey, this is what we're doing that's successful. Like maybe this will help you out a little bit type
Yeah.
thing as a sort of like networking community. Because
Yeah.
I feel like once people do start talking to each other, actually they then end up realizing everyone's in the same boat. And
Yeah.
actually, if we help each other, then,
Yeah.
we really can do well. And obviously, some people do that really well, and some people don't. And I feel like the ones that don't are the ones that then slag off the ones that do. I mean, I've heard some of the most wildest statements made about my company from suppliers, and I'm like, wow, that's really interesting. And I'm like, oh, that's like really silly because I could bring you a lot of work and actually that was unnecessary. So
Mm.
it's not a broad general statement. Obviously, many people in the wedding industry are incredible, but I think that the wedding industry is a lot of independent people working by
Yes.
themselves.
That's what I was going to say. Where people are alone working, they feel like in survival mode. I have to protect myself. I have to put barriers up. And I see that as well. When I bring some communities together in person or online, then they go, oh, okay, we can all be friends and support each other. Great.
Yeah, we can all be friends and support each other, but also I think it's very interesting to be vocal and ask questions. Like I was watching something the other day and it was three photographers on a podcast, actually very funny. But they were like slating a wedding venue and they were slating it and they were like, they earn so much money. And I was like, it's really interesting because if they actually went and sat and spoke to the owner of that venue and said, hey, how many weddings are you doing a year? And how many weddings does it take to pay for the building? And
This is such
how
a misconception with venues
such a
that the profit
misconception.
margins are so much smaller than everybody thinks because the cost of running a venue, the food and beverage, the team, the
The
heating, the
staff, the
refurbishment, the insurance, like on and on and on and on. And then people are like, oh my God, 10 grand for a wedding. And you're like, there's no profit in there.
it's really funny because they're like, oh, they're doing 100 weddings and they're charging 10 grand a wedding. I'm like, they're going bankrupt.
Yeah, like
They're not
literally.
making any money. They're going bankrupt.
Yeah, it's
Um,
nuts.
Yeah. So, that for me is just sometimes I feel like a little bit more understanding, a little bit more support. Like we are all here to help everybody. And maybe when someone has made a decision, it's like if you don't agree with that decision, maybe reach out to that person and be like, hey, I'd really like to understand why you've made that decision. I've seen it where people have said like, oh, we're suppliers and we go to a venue and they won't even give us a free Coca-Cola. Now, I'm like to my staff, like if the photographers want a drink, like let them have a drink. I don't let them have alcohol because I don't think anyone should be drinking when they're working,
Oh,
but like
no, no, absolutely not.
have a drink for sure. But the thing is that if you go, okay, I'm doing 300 weddings a year, I've got 5 suppliers a day drinking a drink. It's like when you start to actually do the math and
Yeah.
then they're like, but you make so much money. And it's like, I do make so much money, but now I'm spending 30 grand on people drinking Coca-Cola, staffing
100%.
included.
It's like when people used to email me and be like, can I come in for a coffee with you? And it used to drive me up the wall because I'm like, I have zero time. So I've
Yeah.
now got to find an hour to sit and have coffee that my hotel is going to pay for. And of course, it's not the like 5 quid for the coffee, but it's like, you want my time, you want my coffee so that you can sell me your product.
Yeah.
How is this of
Yeah.
benefit to me?
Yeah.
It doesn't
Anyways,
make sense.
I can see this going viral now on like she can't do math on how much a Coca-Cola costs. But It was just an example. It's
Get
just,
off the high horse, people. She's just giving an example.
I'm just giving an example. But yeah, that for me is kind of like, I think I do have the luxury of being in a position where it's like, okay, we are doing quite well. So then it's like when we are doing quite well, we're able to then turn around and be like, okay, good, like let's all do well together.
Yeah.
Let's
But
work
you're
out ways
also
that we can all do well together.
employing people and giving them great salaries and giving them great jobs and paying high taxes. Like you're also, investing back into people and the countries where you have businesses.
Yeah, 100%.
Um, Sam, are there any new projects coming up?
Oh, you know me. I'm always looking into something new. There are a few new projects coming up. Obviously, again, we've spoken in the past. I did at one point create a Gilchrist Brides Club.
Yeah.
Um, it went quite well, but then I pivoted and was like, actually, I want to do it slightly differently. We've rebranded that, and it's still back in development, but then at the same time, it's like now it's got all these like fun things that couples can purchase. For me, I kind of looked at we obviously are delivering 2,500 weddings a year. And so then people are like, oh, are you going to start doing cakes? Are you going to start doing floristry? Are you going to start doing this? And I'm like, no, honestly, because that for me, and decor, like you could do in-house decor. And it's like, I could do in-house decor, but then my decor companies aren't going to do decor. Like
Mm.
that's not really the community I'm trying to build.
Yeah.
And then that's a hard conversation sometimes with investors and stuff where they're like, well, you could be capitalizing, there's all this money left on the table. And I'm like, I'm quite happy to leave it on the table. But then there's a point of like, okay, no, well, there are other things that we can do. For example, every couple is going to buy a certain number of things for their wedding. So then it's like, okay, could we create our own shop or online thing or da 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 da. So that's kind of the world that we're in right now, is looking like what could we supply the couples.
Smart. That sounds
Yeah,
good. And
yeah.
finally, what's the most memorable wedding story from your career?
I have a few.
Share
Uh,
the few. Share a few.
the most memorable, the funny ones. So the funny ones that always make me chuckle is it doesn't start funny, but I promise it gets funny. There was an elderly gentleman who was at the venue. He should have had a walking frame with him. And for whatever reason, he didn't have it. And someone let him wander off by himself. He'd had a glass of wine, and he hit the cobble. The venue's got cobbled pathway, and obviously ended up falling over. Now the family were like, "Oh, we're so sorry. He should have been by himself. Fine, no big deal."
Mm.
But he was on blood thinners, so he cut his, I think he cut his chest, and it looked like chainsaw massacre had happened. Obviously we called an ambulance. It was all fine in the end. He was fine. But we were outside scrubbing, trying to get this blood off the steps because obviously there was a wedding the next day as well. It was like the key step part out of the venue. Scrub, 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 scrub. And all of a sudden, I hear something probably like, about 10 meters away in the trees. And I'm like, oh my God, someone else has fallen over. And I was like, this can't be, like, how is this happening? Because there'd already been something else from the wedding like earlier in the day. So I go running over to rescue this person that's fallen over, to realize that there's two sets of feet coming out of the bushes.
Well,
Nobody had fallen over. And I was like,
they had, but it was on purpose.
on purpose. So I was like, oh, please excuse me, do carry on. In my British, like, oh my gosh. Went running back, was like, oh, I don't know what to do about that. Carried on
We're
scrubbing.
cleaning blood off a step whilst two people are kind of, enjoying themselves in the bush.
Enjoying themselves in the bush.
Only in weddings is this a possibility.
Only in weddings. Anyway, a few minutes later, probably about 5 minutes later, they sheepishly walked past us. So we're just sitting there giggling, like, I don't know what to say. People are like, why didn't you tell them to stop? I'm like, I'm not going to, no,
Like, enjoy yourselves. Crack on.
enjoy yourselves. Maybe
I'm all about the love.
Call it Raven. It's like, oh no. But I mean, there's stories like that. They're endless. They're just endless.
Oh my goodness. Sam, if people want to follow you, find you, where should they go?
So obviously we're all over Instagram, TikTok, we've got a website. It's various versions of Gilchrist
So to
collection.
follow you personally, we'll pop the links as well in the
Oh
show
yeah, to
notes,
follow
guys.
me
You have your
personally.
own Instagram, so if people want to see you as the CEO leading as well, that's a great one.
Yeah. Yeah, so I have my personal Instagram, I think it's Samantha Gilchrist official, because when I got married, I went from being the only Samantha Wordy on the planet to being one of like 600 Samantha Gilchrist. Was very upsetting. And yeah, there's many. I actually can't remember
It's
exactly what
fine. We'll put all the links in the show notes. And just to close up, what's one question I should have asked you, but I didn't?
they are. One question you should have asked me, but you didn't. Oh, Kelly, I prepared for so many of your questions. I've been listening to your podcast and been like, "Ooh, what's this?"
I like to mix it up.
I guess one question you could have asked me that you didn't is, I mean, we did joke in the beginning that you were going to ask me about trends, and I was like, I've been researching
So
trends.
tell us, what do you love? What do you hate?
So I suppose the only thing I would say, if you were gonna, I kind of was thinking about this. If you were gonna say to me, like, what trends do you love? What trends do you hate? It's actually more than that. What I hate is people telling people that they shouldn't do something. Like, there's a whole thing right now where it's like jam jars are out. And it's like, yeah, okay, you know what? Jam jars were like, whatever,
Well, that's
2019, 2020, like everyone had a jam jar. But honestly, if you still want to do jam jars on your wedding, like, knock yourself out.
sure.
And I think for me, that's kind of it. Like, I'm loving certain trends that come through that are clever. Like, for example, right now you can people are not having veils, but they still want the veil picture. So they're just getting a cheap veil from Amazon and bringing it to the photo parts just to do the throw the veil, have the kiss under the veil, beautiful
Perfect.
picture. One thing I cannot think with, because I'm a, you know, photographer that likes things to be in certain positions, is blurry photos. I feel like someone took a blurry photo and needed to justify it and started the blurry photo trend.
Okay. Yeah, no.
I don't understand it, but I can kind of be like, okay, it's arty, like knock yourself out. But like I don't really understand that. And then the only thing I would say as a photographer that I was always passionate about was when people were like, I just want natural pictures. I would always be like, good, go and show me your definition of natural pictures. And they would then send me a whole load of pretty staged photos because I can categorically, hands down, say anyone that hired a photographer that's a reportage photographer, so it's someone that doesn't do any posing, they just photograph what's happening, regretted it because they didn't get the formals that they wanted. They're laughing and they've got 10 chins. And yes, it's an in the moment, but no one needs to see that.
Yeah, well, we need a mix of both, right?
You have to have a mix of both.
Yeah.
You don't just want the formals, you don't just want the reportage, you want a mix of both. And actually, some of the most incredible natural photos are completely staged in the sense that you're like, we're going to put the two of you here, we're going to make your dress look like this, and da da da. And now we're going to make you natural by being like, oh, just walk down there, or just talk about how the ceremony went, and then you'll get the natural laugh or the natural gaze or something like that. So it doesn't have to be full on model structured.
Yeah. Mm.
But it does need to be some structure if you want those pictures.
I think we're going to have to do a part 2 to our podcast because there's more that we could have talked about and we've gone way over time, but it's been a brilliant conversation.
Maybe cut some bits out.
No, we don't edit. On the After Dark, we don't edit. We start, we finish, and that's what goes
a little
up.
swear word or sneak in.
Oh, no, they'll be in there. Sam, thank you so much for joining me, and we will definitely have to do a part 2.